Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience. Welcome to the East-West Show. Jack Chow on the East-West Show with G&E TV. For quite some time, the issue of Daca has been very viral everywhere, as well as on my show. I have lots of friends coming here to talk about it from different angles. Today, I have the opportunity to have a very high-profile individual, Mr. Joel Fox of Fox and the Hound Daily.com, and also professor of Pepperdine, to come join us to shed lights on this issue. By the title of this show, you probably find out we say Daca by nature. Daca by nature, which means that we want to go into depth about the issue to find out what exactly in it, the content, the consequences, so on and so forth with the future. So to my friend, Joel Fox, welcome. Professor Fox, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, and my audiences too. Right. So we know the issue Daca has been viral for quite some time, even though it was a executive order of 2012. 5 years later, it goes once again into the public eye, onto the public lips, onto the public paper, onto the public screens, everywhere you go. So how do you see, as a professor, the nature of Daca, starting a general picture, please?
Well, as you know, Daca was put in place to protect children who came to this country not on their own volition, but came with parents, but didn't do it through the proper document procedures. So they're vulnerable in the sense that they, under the law, could be deported. President Obama signed an executive order, and he said he was going to protect them. They were going to be able to apply for jobs, for work, to serve in the military, and it was deferred action. In fact, DACA stands for deferred action.
Deferred action, yeah.
For childhood, arrivals. And so something had to be done. We have a new administration, a new president, one who spoke during the campaign about taking some action against people who had come into the country with no documents. And his attorney general, of course, issued the order that said that we have 6 months for Congress to solve this problem. And there's an implied threat that if they don't, then we're talking about 800,000 people who are eligible under DACA who the threat is that they would be deported. Now, the president has made some indication that he wants to solve the problem.
All right.
There are many members of Congress on both sides of the political aisle who say they want to solve the problem. Where the politics will come in and make it difficult to do this is that some people will say, yes, we understand that these children came in, they're now in school, they're now serving in the military. We should look at this in a humanitarian way and give them a break. But at the same time, if we pass that bill, we should do some other things to make it harder for future people to cross the border. Maybe even spend money for that wall that President Trump's talking about. Well, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to pass the bill. If they did it just to protect the students and there was no attachment to it, it's probably an easier thing to do. And some people want to do that. So that's going to be the debate we're going to hear in Congress on how to pass a DACA reform within 6 months that the President and the Attorney General gave Congress to act, and do it. Will they do it with other attachments, with other issues attached to the bill, or will they just do it for the students? And I think if they just do it for the students, Jack, I think it's going to pass because the general public is in support. You can read polls. The general public, by wide margins, 3 to 1, say, yeah, these kids did nothing wrong.
Yeah, all right.
And so let's take care of them.
I believe, Professor, in school you teach fundamental, right? By fundamental, from that point of perspective, do you think, as a definition, is DACA a political issue, or it's not a political issue at all?
Well, I think it has become a political issue.
Ah.
But I think there is a very moral humanitarian issue that's also entwined here, and I think it makes sense that these people who have come not on their own, who have filled out applications. You know, these DACA folks have filled out applications so they could work legally in the country under President Obama's executive order. They're following the rules. They're following the rules as they knew them. They're following the law as they knew them. And I think we should take care of those folks.
All right.
But we should do it legally. We should pass a law. I think in one sense the president and the attorney general were right that this executive order that President Obama signed was vulnerable to a court attack. Remember, one of the reasons that the president said Congress should pass something in 6 months is because there were attorney generals in 10 other states who said they were going to sue over this executive order and said it was unconstitutional. They might have had a point. So let's fix it by passing a law and protecting these students. And there's another important piece here, and that is that California particularly is affected by the DACA. I mentioned earlier that there are about 800,000 people in the United States who have, filled out applications for DACA, who are DACA people, if you will. 200,000 of those are in California alone.
Yeah, all right.
And 95% of them are in school.
Amongst the 50 states.
Yeah, right.
We're taking 20%, right?
We're taking quite a bit, yeah.
We're on the hit, we bear the burden.
We bear the burden, and these folks are in school, they're at work. The business community, the president of the California Chamber of Commerce said, California's not prepared to lose these 200,000 people.
All right, okay.
So something should be done.
The other day I was in an interview with another friend of mine who is very close to me. He kind of pointed out that amongst the 800,000, there are some bad apples, right? There are some criminals also, right? For that group earned a very bad reputation. Do you think that could be a factor taken into consideration?
Yeah, I think this whole discussion about immigration reform, that's an important piece that you raised, Jack.
Yeah.
Because there are people who came into this country illegally who have committed crimes in this country.
Okay.
In fact, to move away from DACA for a second, as you probably and your viewers will know, that recently the governor of California and the president of the Senate have come up with an agreement over making California a sanctuary state. But one of the important pieces of that agreement was the governor was not willing to sign off on this until the bill said if people committed certain crimes, and they had a list of like 700 of them. If they committed certain crimes, they were not going to be protected by a sanctuary state.
So that's a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Right?
That means we have to protect the safety
of the
population.
Of course.
And that's important. So if there are any DACA students who are criminals, then they have to be taken care of as all those who fall under the sanctuary state. I think there's probably, though, in DACA, there's probably very limited amount of that. I think the issue of the criminal element who came here illegally is more involved with the larger discussion of immigration reform rather than the DACA folks. I mean, there are some in every population, right, that go the wrong way, take the wrong path. But I don't think it's a very large amount of people. And if that's true, then they'll fall under the immigration laws that says you can deport people who have performed criminal acts.
All right, good. And I mean, in general, I have no problem. I believe lots of my audiences have no problem to deport those bad apples.
Oh, I think that should be a given, right?
And yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And that is unrelated to the term we call immigration reform or immigration, because bad guys are bad guys.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
Yeah,
So-
you have U.S.-born bad guy. You have foreign bad guys.
No question.
You have illegal bad guys, illegal bad guys. Okay. They belong to their own category. Very good. And I'm so glad I got my Professor Fox to clarify me on this issue, because I was so mystified, because I see a guest every single day. Everybody's come from their own corner of life.
Sure.
So they talk differently. So I'm kind of like in the middle, sometimes get caught. My dear friend, today I have the pleasure, special pleasure. I have Professor Pepperdine, Professor Fox, Joe Fox, visiting me, shedding lights on the Daca issue. We call this show Daca by Nature. Stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience, my dear fellow Californians. Welcome, my dear fellow Americans. How about that, right? Welcome back to the show, because the issue we're talking about is not only California, it's national. Even though California takes the big chunk of it,
Takes a big chunk of everything, doesn't it?
We'll take a big
We're
chunk
in a big
of
state.
everything, right? We're a big state. Joining me today is my dear friend, Mr. Joe Fox. He is the founder and CEO of the Fox and the Hans Daily.com. Also, he is a professor for Pepperdine, teaching political
Public
science,
policy, right.
Public policy.
Yeah.
We're sharing his thoughts and wisdom on the Daca issue. And with the clarification for the first step, I was happy already, because it was somehow, it is a humanitarian issue.
I think so. I think it is a humanitarian issue, and I think a lot of people recognize that. A lot of Americans recognize that. If you look at the polling, you'll see that, 3 out of 4 say that these young people should stay. They're contributing to society, and they didn't come here to break the law. Someone brought them along, and so I think that there's a lot of compassion and empathy for the students, and they're not only students, they actually serve in our military. They help protect us. So I think people are very sympathetic to that cause, and I think you'll see that across the board in Congress. I mean, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan, has already said we should do something
for
the
so
DACA students.
It doesn't smell too bad so far.
Yeah, but then politics will interfere.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of politics, I have always been bothered about the fact that, okay, let's put it this way. Let's try to stay in Donald Trump's shoes, and think about his business in a way that we probably call it sober, right? Obama, now that Obama has already signed as executive order as my predecessor, right? So, well, let it stay that way. It's not perfect. It has lots of holes. Let it go, let it bust, let it do whatever. And I pick up something else.
But
would that be a good choice for him, rather than saying, I will overturn Obamacare, I will overturn the Obama executive order on DACA? That will portray him in a very bad way.
Well,
am I right?
No, there's two, they're distinct things. The Obamacare was passed by Congress and signed by the president. It's a law. The DACA situation was an executive order because Congress couldn't pass immigration reform. So the president took the action on his own, President Obama. So President Trump comes along, he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and he can't do that unless Congress changes the law. That's why he tried to put it through Congress.
Yeah, with the bills, versions after versions after versions.
Yeah, and of course President Obama wouldn't sign that. So President Trump says, well, I'll sign it. Now Congress can't get him a bill. They can't pass it because of all of the controversy over replacing the health care law. The executive order that President Obama signed for the DACA students, that's different. That's just action by the president. And there are a number of attorneys that say that that's not legal, that it could be overturned by a court, and there was a threat to sue. The Attorney General of Texas was leading a group of attorney generals who said, I am going to file a lawsuit in the federal court to undo President Obama's executive order. So President Trump comes along and he says, and whatever his reasons, let's put those aside for the moment. Whatever his reasons, he says, well, this challenge is coming from Texas and from other states, and just to make sure that a court won't throw out this law and put these 800,000 vulnerable people in a real uncertain situation, you, Congress, should pass a law, because if it's a law, then we're not in jeopardy of a court challenge.
We'll all go by the by, as things will be a lot easier than arguing back and forth, then finger pointing, the name calling, and some stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's the problem, the legal problem is solved if it's a law.
Yeah, you're right. And Professor, I really appreciate the fact that you just now, a while ago, mentioned something which is a very, very huge point, saying that we want to separate the Daca issue with the immigration reform in the long run, right? That sounds quite a vision to me. That sounds quite reasonable. Am I right if I say that would be something we want to hold on to, keep our finger crossed for, even including the wall, the border wall?
Well, I think, look, in an ideal world, Jack, if we could just take care of everything, we probably want to have all immigration reform, whatever that form takes, done at one time. But that's not the way the real world works. And if we could do that, take care of the security at the border, whether it be a wall or better, more agents or whatever that fix takes, and we take care of the DACA people, and we have a better immigration policy, and we deal with the people who are in the country illegally, however we decide to do that, that would be the ultimate fix. But all those things, I think, have political problems with them, because there's a lot of people who don't want the wall. There's a lot of people who don't want an amnesty for people in the country. And so all of those issues get tied up, and if they get tied to the DACA issue, then they'll tend to bring the DACA issue down. So that's why I said earlier, it might be easier to separate them. Do the DACA thing, because there's so much support for that. But politics may interfere there as well, because folks who want, for example, the wall, say, okay, I'll give you DACA if you give me money for the wall. Well, that will set off other Congress people. So the wheeling and dealing becomes involved in this debate.
Yesterday, I interviewed a friend of mine, Alan Diamante, who was the attorney, won the case, Gonzalez, defend Gonzalez from being deported.
Right.
And he, when asked about DACA and its future, though, he said probably will pass. I don't know, but there might be somebody who might use DACA as a bargaining chip to get some wall money.
Well, it's exactly what we were just talking about. I mean, you said it more simply than I did.
He
but
said,
that's exactly
what
that's
what he's quote unquote. Quote unquote from Mr. Diamante says, well, give me some wall money. Because the wall money was originally said to be paid by Mexico, and later on revised to somebody, say, hey, somebody else will pay it, other ways pay it. Now that there is no way for the money, well, probably there's way to ask money.
Well, remember, it was the president as a campaigner, as a candidate, who said the money's going to come from Mexico. He was the only one that said that. Later he said, I want Congress to put it up, I'll get it from Mexico later. Look he's lately said, we're going to get something done on DACA, and there was an indication this week that he said that we'll get something done with DACA and we don't have to tie it to the wall. Well, some of the Republicans in Congress would agree with that sentiment.
All right.
Some of them would not agree with that sentiment.
All right. So. And it sounds a very kind of like flippy floppy something.
He's been accused of that. Yes.
Yeah, back and forth, left and right, something. Yes. But as a professor at Pepperdine College, Pepperdine University, I believe it is fundamentally understood that the politics under this beautiful flag of democracy has to based upon the benefit of your people you represent by logic.
Right.
Am I right?
Right.
So do we see that now?
Well, but that's true, and it's the overall benefit. You want to achieve something for the people, but there's a lot of people who have different opinions, right? And different representatives come at the problem differently because their constituencies have a different view of how things should be carried out, and that's why. So the attitude of California, where you and I sit now, is quite different than the attitude of Texas, and maybe the attitude of Wyoming. So representatives will have a different point of view on what the people want. People of California generally may want something different than people from other states.
That's why you have the red-blue states.
That's exactly right. It's the difference between the red and blue states, and of course within the states, you can have President Trump won a number of counties in California, but he got wiped out overall by 4 million votes because a lot of the urban areas and the coastal areas, very Democratic areas.
One reason when he gets elected, then there must be something enough to indicate that he's good for the job, right? Well, I take it that way.
Well, I think there was a definite concern by a lot of people about the economy, where they were going, how their life was, direction that their life was taken. Remember, he won under the electoral college system by winning 3 states that they didn't think they were going to win: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania.
He did win,
and by a total of about 175,000 votes. That would have turned it around. But people in those regions of the countries didn't see the economy working in their favor, and he was speaking to them about, I'm going to get jobs, I'm going to protect America, I'm going to make America great again. That was his slogan. And it convinced a lot of people, let's give it a try. And so now they'll be judging him next time he's up.
All right. Thank you very much. My dear audience, my lovely friends, today we're in a discussion talking about Daca versus its future by nature. Anyway, it's my pleasure and also the pleasure of all my audience in my group. I have Professor Fox from Pepperdine University visiting here to shed light on this issue. It's a very mystifying issue, though simple. Going into the depth, you find it very, very mystifying. The deeper you go, the more mystifying it is. So let's take another short moment out. When we come back, we'll find out from the overall definition of immigration reform, though, how many big chunks are there involved underneath. Stay with us, please. Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the discussion. At the East-West Show, we always find we'll discuss about those important issues. Daca, of course, is one of them. For a week and a half time, we've been focusing on that. I have lots of friends visiting me, and they represent people from all corners of life. Now, today I have the pleasure of Professor Fox of Pepperdine University visiting me. He's also the founder and CEO of Fox and Hans Daily.com. And as a media man and a professor and a scholar for political policies?
Yes.
Oh, such a scary name.
Well, anyway. What I tell my students is if they want to do public policy, they have to understand the politics around it. And that's what you and I are talking about.
Yeah,
Jack, right
we have
now.
to touch it.
We're talking about policy. We want to talk about the policy of immigration. And what we're spending a lot of time about is what are the politics to get it done.
We can't go away from it.
That's right.
If we want to touch it, right?
You have to understand. That's
very good.
I call that my lesson number 1.
Exactly, exactly. Then lesson number 1, even though you don't like it, for example, my case, I touch it every day.
You have to.
Every day. Okay, now, immigration reform, only 2 words. All right, it sounds like a big indication to me. Underneath, we have Daca, we have, for example, DAPA, we have 11 million already in it.
Yes.
we have a deportation program going on, and we have a wall which is of nowhere.
Right.
Right? So all these issues, okay? The way to analyze it, you find something at hand, something towards the future, right? You just now mentioned a very important issue that what we do now might have delivered a message towards future to deter, to stop future coming-ins, to reduce, to mitigate this future problem. That's one concern. Now, for the inside already, 11 million, what are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
One of the issues that you didn't, and when you made the list of immigration, one issue to add to that is amnesty, right?
Oh yeah, amnesty.
There's a discussion, should we have amnesty? Now, there are people in Congress who say, absolutely not. No, we're not going to do amnesty. Remember, there was an amnesty plan that occurred in this country 30-odd years ago.
Bush 41.
Actually, it was President Reagan.
Reagan?
It was President Reagan.
Okay.
President Reagan did an amnesty plan. I think it was 1986. And part of that plan was not only supposed to be allowing the people who are here to stay under certain rules, but also to make the border safer, so there wouldn't be a future flow of people coming across the border. Well, people who criticize any effort to do amnesty today will tell you, well, look what happened. We granted amnesty, but we didn't close the border. Now, there's more people coming in now. So that's one of the issues that is in the way of any kind of amnesty possibility, because they didn't do a good job of protecting the border post the 1986 amnesty. However, it's part of the discussion. I mean, you've got 11 million people, as you
that's
pointed out. That's a fact.
Hard fact.
And while there's been talk about, sending them back to their homelands, it's practically unrealistic.
All right.
Remember, not even this presidential election, the one prior to that, when Mitt Romney was the Republican.
Yeah, Mitt Romney
and he talked about people volunteering to go
volunteer
back home.
deportation.
And that wasn't practical
Which
either.
is a joke.
Yeah, it wasn't practical. And so people who look at it with a realistic eye, not those who say, I wish this would happen, but what can we do, are trying to figure out, well, everyone seems to agree that criminals, earlier discussion you and I had, they should go.
Kick them out.
Kick them
no
out.
Problem.
They don't belong here.
Yeah, they don't belong here.
And then if people are being productive members of society, and the issue that is raised often is, well, what happens if the father is here illegally, but the children are here legally?
Yeah, such as the case the Amandi represented.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Right?
So do you tear apart a family? And that becomes an emotional issue. And so if you're dealing, but on the other hand, we shouldn't forget this, we're a country of laws. Right?
All right, yes.
We're a country of laws, not of men. President John Adams said that many, many years ago.
Okay, we're a country of laws, not men.
And so if we are built on a foundation of laws, why do we bend the laws? Where do we bend the laws? How do we make up for the fact that people have taken advantage of the law, come in illegally? So that's the balancing act.
You're right.
The emotional side, you don't want to tear families apart. People came when they were children and they shouldn't have, someone else brought them. And we're a country of laws and we want to uphold laws. So if there's an opportunity to try to, meld the two, say we're going to enforce the laws from now on, but we're going to have sympathy for some of the folks who came here, like the Daca people.
And the rational and the emotional.
Yeah, and the rational, the emotional, how do you make that pragmatic? And because of those features that have been so hard to meld together, is why we haven't had immigration reform, because it's just a clash of ideas that haven't been able to come up with
Put aside of politics, okay? Put aside of politics, just to look at the 11 million here.
Yes.
Number one, you do not have the money and the manpower, or even buses.
You're not going to,
buses to to actually deport them to the border to throw them over the border.
Right.
Number one. And number two, there are men and women, they make babies.
Sure.
Right?
Who become American citizens.
They become
under the law.
Yeah, under the law, right? So now you're holding a problem that is growing. Right. Not only that side, that is growing.
Right.
So sooner or later, something has to be done. Do you think, regardless of you're on the left side or the right side of the aisle, though, people should recognize there's something on hand too? Also on hand.
Well, I think that people should recognize reality and try to solve the problem within reality, while still upholding principles they believe in. I mean, we should make sure that the laws are working. We shouldn't be a lawless society. So we should try to do that. But we also should understand the current circumstances, as you point out very well. How do you move 11 million people who don't want to go?
Literally, it's a mission impossible.
So what you have to do is try to find some middle ground, some compromise that will stop it from happening in the future, and dealing with what we have now. You know, if people are productive members of society. If they're not a productive member of society, if they're a criminal, they're gone. And we should start doing that. Now, one of the debates in this state over the sanctuary state law that we were talking about earlier, Jack, is that it would protect people from being interviewed by the the ICE agents who would lead to deportation, and even some that had some criminal background would be protected. So the governor came in and he said to the Senate president who was running the bill, he said, that's not good enough, I don't want that bill. So they made a compromise just yesterday, from when we're talking here today, saying they're going to add 700 crimes into this bill, that if you committed one of those crimes, you're a repeat drunk driver.
I'm fully in support.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of discussion that I think is going on. It's certainly going on the state level.
You drunk driving, you hit your wife, or so forth. They belong to the same to the category, right? Kicking them out, we have no problem. And then by doing that, we reduce the pressure of 11 million. Right.
And you're keeping productive citizens who are
working,
and paying
positive
taxes,
citizens, right?
Going to school, serving in the Army.
All right.
So I mean that's a possibility.
You think in the long run that concept could be well accepted?
Well, as I said before, it was accepted back in the 80s, and it was accepted. It was done by a Republican president.
All right.
And it's interesting. I saw an ad recently. Someone, the widow of Steve Jobs, the Apple, is running an ad on behalf of Daca students, and she starts this ad with a clip of President Reagan talking about allowing people a chance. And so, I think it's possible. I think they do have to do the other part, the part that President Trump has brought up, and that is we want to secure the borders. We want to do it right. We didn't do it right in 1986 after the Reagan Compromise. We should do it right now.
Now, to give Donald Trump a fair analysis, when he spoke up, he did not mean to exactly overturn Daca.
No,
am I right?
No. I think he actually put pressure on Congress to get the job done.
The word rescind.
Yeah. Well, I think what he wants to do is I think he would sign a law, my estimation. He would sign a law to protect Daca if Congress passed it. And I think he wants Congress to pass it. But I think what he did recognize, and I think perhaps rightly, I'm not a law professor, I'm not a lawyer, but I think rightly there was a danger that the court was going to throw out President Obama's executive order. So I think Trump said, look, if this is in jeopardy and we want to protect these 800,000 kids who did nothing wrong, then you, Congress, have to do something about it. I can't do it. I'm already saying that a president can't do this. The President Obama didn't do it properly. I can't fix it. Congress, you have to fix it. And he's putting pressure on them to do it. I had a quote in an article I wrote in my Fox and Hounds Daily piece about Daca that's quoted General George Patton, the World War II American general, who said, he used to say, pressure creates diamonds. You get
Pressure create diamonds. Okay,
You get a good fix if you put but it requires a lot of pressure to get there. And so President Trump has put pressure on Congress to get this fix.
All right. My dear audience, what a lovely quote. Pressure makes diamond. I like that. And I believe that we have enough pressure. Probably the next thing to see is our diamond, right? Today, with my good friend, Professor Fox of Pepperdine University, we're talking about U.S. politics and principles. Let's take a very short moment now. For the last segment, I have quite a concern to ask for help, if I may, and I will foreshadow a little bit.
Okay.
It was yesterday with Alan Diamante, the attorney. He mentioned this. Look at the international relations, look at the international positions. We used to be number one, and now we seem to be losing the position number one. The momentum is gone, no longer with us, something like that. And then we discussed from there on, he was kind of feeling sad about what we do. So when we come back, we'll ask you for your opinion, please.
All right.
So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audience, and my dear fellow Americans. Welcome back to the discussion about Daca, Daca by Nature. From Daca by Nature, we stretch the subject to cover immigration reform. We believe immigration reform is supposed to be done. Sooner or later, the issue has to be taken care of, right? So with the help of my friend, Professor Fox, Joe Fox, of Pepperdine, I started to see twilights, especially the quote, pressure makes diamond, makes diamond. That I feel probably is the moment. We are in the process of bearing the pressure. Please stay tough.
Yeah,
for the
true.
pressure.
Yeah.
It was yesterday with my friend Alan Diamante, who successfully defended the father Gonzalez with the daughter.
Yeah. Big news here in Los Angeles.
Big news in Los Angeles. He's been a friend with me for 3 years already. I said, come over. He said, I have schedule. No. I said, I'm important. So next 10 minutes, he's here. All right.
Excellent.
Anyway, he says on the number one position issue, number one nation issue, he says, we are losing that position. And why? He says, look at what we have done. And he says, not exact quote unquote, I'm trying to put it to put it to myself in his own tone, right? Saying,
sure.
Look at what we have done. The wars we created all ended with a failure. Our Wall Street, those sharks created those bitter wines for the whole world to consume, and looks on and on. And we have the white supremacies. We have even Ku Klux Klan come back. We have Nazi signs on the streets. And now we are attacking children who have no fault. He says, quote unquote, this exact quote unquote, every step we make is betraying ourselves, hurting our image. So people are watching us, what we do. So if we are losing, it's natural. So your comment as a professor, please. I know you have lots of students to teach.
Yes.
And they need to be optimistic because they are the future.
They are the
right?
future.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I'll be as pessimistic as your friend.
All right.
I think America is still a shining token to the world.
Oh, good.
And I think that while every country it goes through up and downs, and certainly some of the things that you just mentioned to me don't look good, you know, overall to the world. I think people still understand that America is, you know, President Reagan called it a shining city on the hill. You could say the torch the freedom is still here. I mean, even some of the negatives that he mentioned with some of the people marching on the streets and in a very negative way, they have the freedom to speak. And a lot of the countries in the world, they don't have, no one has the freedom to speak.
Speak of that, President Reagan, last night I saw a clip about him telling a joke. He is a good joke teller.
He was a great joke teller.
He says three dogs, an American dog and a Polish dog and a Russian dog sharing their stories. The American dog says, in America, if you bark long enough, you get meat. And the Polish dog asks, what is meat? and the Russian dog asks, what is bark?
There you go.
We can bark.
We can bark. That's a great story.
We can bark.
It's
Okay,
a great
we can
story.
bark. Okay,
And
I like that.
And the thing is, Jack, I think that some of the things that you listed were, don't make the
You
best.
mentioned about a third bathroom on school camp.
It doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't.
The
look good to some
legalization
people.
of same-sex marriage.
Yeah, but we're still probably the freest country in the world, and a lot of people recognize that. I mean, in all that discussion that all of these discussions we're having, that opens up possibilities for people.
Yeah.
They still want to come here, and that's why the immigration issue that we've been talking about for the last hour is an important topic, not only to us as Americans, but to people in the world.
You're right. Take myself, for example.
Yes.
I'm here talking about Donald Trump, talking about President Obama, President whoever, when I don't even realize that's the freedom.
Yeah.
That is the freedom.
Well, listen,
that's a typical American freedom.
First Amendment. You're freedom of the press. You are a press
I never
person.
got myself in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that
No one's knocking on your door.
All right. Let's bark.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's bark.
You're doing a good
Let's
job
bark.
of
Let's
barking.
bark. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at school though, are young people optimistic?
Well, I think they're a
Do
little.
they feel optimistic?
Young people are always concerned. I particularly deal with people who are just about ready to go out into the workforce. They're always wondering, am I going to
that's
get a job?
a more important moment because they're at the threshold. Right?
Yeah. I get a lot of graduate students in their last year, and they're about to get a master's in public policy. They want to get a job either on the national level or in state or local government, and they're always concerned. Will I get out? Will I find a job? And that's a concern. But that's not your question. You're asking about how they feel about the
how they
country.
feel as a generation.
Yeah, as a generation. It's always a little bit tougher to from one generation to the next to understand some of the scope of that. But I think overall, while there is some concern of the rising generation, I think they still sense that there's great opportunity. I mean, look at the internet in the last couple of decades and all of the opportunities that's created, and the ability to speak, to bark,
to bark
through the internet.
Yeah,
I mean, I think they appreciate what America offers them, and they would just obviously. There are always concerns when little issues come up, and big issues too. I don't want to minimize that. I mean, there are some important issues that are discussed in our country. But I think overall, I still think they understand they're in a pretty good place.
But are they ready to take over what we have on our shoulder? And this is always my concern because they are too tender. All right. For example, back in my time, I was supporting the family when I was 19. Okay, my son, 23.
Yeah.
He's still under my roof.
Yeah.
And asking me, Baba, may I get an ice cream?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, part of that is economics, right? I mean, the economics have changed since you were 19 and your son's 23. And so, there's a lot of children who are back under their parents' roof, and thank goodness they have that, to fall back on. And you're a good dad, and you're saying, yeah, I'm not going to throw you out in the
That's
street.
the only indication.
No, I'm sure there's much more than
right,
that.
good.
But they're not, they're not going to be out in the street, and they're going to have a chance to get going. And that's part of the economic problems that we're having, I think, and not enough opportunity for young people, especially in the housing market. You can't afford housing, But I think that overall, I think that they're going to rise to the occasion. Okay. I remember my generation, and what my parents' generation thought of my generation and said, are we going to be able to trust these guys?
All right,
You know,
good.
I think we did all right.
Professor, we are running over time, but
Okay.
I still have to ask one question.
Sure.
And I will ask my editor to cut myself off. All right, how about that? And at this discussion with Ellen Del Monte,
Yes.
we mentioned about the poem by Emma Lazarus.
Yes.
Lazarus.
Yes.
With Statue of Liberty, right?
Yes.
Give these to me.
Yeah.
You're poor.
Right.
Your tempest tossed. Your masses huddled to yearning for breathe free, right?
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yep.
So all to me, something like that represents American spirit.
Yeah.
Do you think that will come back?
I think it's actually here. If you look at it a little differently, I think people are welcoming to immigrants. Mm-hmm. But because of the circumstances from when she wrote that poem 100 years ago and now, the rules are a little bit different. We had open borders back then. We don't have that today because we have to control it a little bit.
All right.
But if people go through the process and they do it properly,
They're
they're
still
welcome.
welcome.
They're still welcome to
Very
breathe
good.
free.
All right, good. I'm very easy to teach. I learn fast.
You got an A+ in my class.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the A class.
Thank you.
All right, my dear audience, we'll see you next time.